Hello, 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 Black women who are a part of this Blaze Virtual Summit experience. We are so ecstatic that you are here. And I got to tell you, I cannot think of better people to kick off this very first panel discussion of this 5-day experience with, because these ladies truly do exemplify adding ease to their lives. They prioritize wellness, they prioritize working smarter and not harder, and they're firefighter, right? Like these ladies are killing it in their lanes. So yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for them to unpack this very important topic of emotional and mental wellness and entrepreneurship. And again, we're talking to Black women specifically, right? So if something hits you, drop some comments in the chat, put some emojis popping up on the screen, because your freedom, your transparency, your authenticity is going to free somebody else. I promise you, because you're not alone. So I want to hear more about these ladies. I want you to hear more about where they come from, right? So let's talk about it. Let's dive into it. Ladies, if you would, please share a bit about who you are and why wellness is a huge part of it. Tamika, why don't you start?
Yes, thank you, Casey. So I am Antika Hood, and I am a coach. So I have a diversity coaching certification. So I coach with that lens. I also am working on my PhD in organizational leadership. And so that's a big part of why wellness is important to me, because in work situations, right, such as microaggressions or such as, where you felt like your voice wasn't heard, people don't realize the mental impact that it has on you. And so for me, focusing on psychology so that I can help other women, particularly women of color, really be able to take the time out to focus on their own mental health, right? Even if that means taking time off from work. Prime example, I was dealing with a situation at work recently, and I thought, oh, I have to keep pushing through. You have to be the strong Black woman, but I finally said no. Like, I can't do it anymore. So I took the time off that I needed, and I focused on meditation and my mental wellness, and now I can come back and I can be stronger than ever for, not only my business, but for my family as well. And so it's important for us to really put our mental health first.
Yeah, I love that, Tamika, and I love how you talked about this term, the strong Black woman, because still, right at the end of 2021, we're still fighting against that stereotype, not just with other people, but within our family dynamics and what our parents expect for us, etc. So kudos to you for fighting against that in your own life and being very well versed, right, in the things that are important for us, getting tools, right, to work through it ourselves. Thank you so much. Kristen, what about you?
Okay, well, my name is Kristen Feaster, also known as K. Marie. I am based in Charleston, South Carolina. I am a lifestyle and commercial photographer, candle maker, podcast host, all the things, entrepreneur. And I started my wellness journey, honestly, when I moved here. I'm from Columbia, South Carolina, and I moved to Charleston, I think it was 2018, very beginning of 2018. And that's when I began my wellness journey. And I realized that I could not show up as my best self for my business until I focused on my mental health. And since then, it's an ever evolving journey. You have your waves, you have your ups and downs. But I know now when it's time, like my sis said, when it's time to take a break, right? When it's time to take some time off, when it's time to focus on your family, when it's time to focus on yourself, right? And it's been healing. It's been so healing. I've seen a major difference, just how I do my day-to-day business, right? I know how to pay attention to me first, fill my cup up first before I open an email, before I answer the phone call, before I go out and do the photo shoots or whatever it is. And I didn't know how to do that before, right? I felt like I was pouring out into everybody else and I was forgetting about me. And so when I realized and started committing to being well and what that means for me, that's just when everything just became more clear and I became more free. And so I'm committed to making that choice every single day.
Beautiful, sis. And I can't wait to get into this discussion because you said what that means to me. Like, that is deep in and of itself, right? Because we have to understand what grounds us, right? Like, what makes us feel the most free or loved or protected and all of that. Super dope, Kristen. I'm so happy to have you in this conversation. Tabitha, what about you?
Hello, everybody. First off, I just want to say all the shades of melanin that I see here are absolutely beautiful. It's rare. Yes, snaps for us. It's beautiful to see, truly. My name is Tabitha. I'm 28 years old. I've lived in Southern California my entire life. Live about 25 minutes from Pacific Coast Highway, so I live very close to the coast, the Pacific Ocean. Grown up going to the beach. My father's a minister, so we're a pastor's family. I grew up with a very religious and Christian background, and that's at the core of what my business is, but I'll go a few paces before that. When it came to my wellness journey, the highly compressed version of that story is that it pretty much started back in 2018. I have been through a lot in my life. There's not even enough time in a day to explain all that I've been through. And there was a lot of trauma and abandonment that had occurred. Thankfully, not from my parents or anything of that nature. They've been the closest, most solid people I've ever had in my entire life. Praise God, because I know not everyone has that opportunity. And so they've been the people that have really held me up through all this stuff. And 2018 was the year that I hit the bottom. I had been in college, and college life is stressful for anybody. And I was at a job that was stressing me out like no other. But in 2018, I had been out of a abusive relationship since a couple of months before, back in 2017, and it was an experience. And ironically enough, it was with someone who looked like me. So I thought that I would be the most at home in a relationship with someone like me, but that was not the case. And so the narcissism came up, the gaslighting came up. He also came from a minister's family, so there was the clashing of the religion. It was horrible. And I knew that I had to walk away immediately. Like, there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It was just, I'm done. So I cut it off. I was engaged at the time, had the dress, everything, but deep in my soul and in my bones, I knew this is not healthy for me. January of this year, I registered myself as Holistic Nutrition Pathways for Life, LLC. Thank you very much. Yes, I did. And I'm so proud of how far I've come. The people that I serve are millennial women like myself, and millennial women of faith, to be exact, who went through those struggles that I had, who dealt with the body dysmorphia, who dealt with the comparison game because, my hips are curvier than such and such on Instagram. And so what? Curves are amazing. Yes, they are. All those different things, who felt like their faith was shaken. So those are the women I serve. I serve them in a way where I help guide them into learning how to balance their physical and their mental health, because both are important. And you can't have one without the other. They're very cohesive. So that is my backstory. That is who I serve. And thank you, Casey, of course, for giving me the opportunity to even be here to begin with. I really appreciate it.
Of course, I'm happy to have you as part of this conversation, Tabitha. And with that, I just want to reiterate that this is sacred space. This is intentionally sacred, protected, safe space for Black women, because we took many roads to get here, if we be real about it, right? Most of us did not choose this because we were born into a whole lot of money. We were like, what are we going to do with it, right? Trauma got many of us here. right? Having no other choice, got many of us here. Having mouths to feed, got many of us here, right? Being battered and abused, got many of us here. And my hope is that we normalize having a place for anger, right? Yeah, society wants to say, look at this nasty, sassy Black woman, but I strongly believe that there has to be a place for screaming and yelling and saying, I'm so resentful, I'm so angry, right? And I think this conversation is a huge part of that. So thank you so much, Tabitha. Thank you, everyone. And last but not least, we have the systems guru herself. Taylor, please tell us a bit about your backstory and how wellness is a part of that.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Hey, everyone. Hey, beautiful Black women. My name is Taylor Drew, and I am a business systems consultant that currently resides in Atlanta, Georgia. Born and raised in Akron, Ohio, only child from a single mother. So I watched her take on a lot, taking on everything and anything. She's like introverted. We're kind of like opposite personalities. So she wouldn't speak much if she did need help. So growing up in that space, I kind of like took on those traits. Being who I was, I would take on every single thing, whether that was in high school, college, whatever, all the volunteer opportunities, all of the parties, right? I'm a party girl, having all of the friends, all of the obligations, because I just felt like that's something that I had to do as a Black woman, was to just figure things out. And wellness is so important to me personally, because I kind of, similarly to Tabitha, I went through a bout of like depression and anxiety, kind of like that low point a few years ago. And it wasn't until then that I realized that putting myself first is a priority. Like, I was in the bed paralyzed from anxiety, like nothing like, physically wrong with me, but it was just all mental. And I just literally could not get up out the bed. And that's when I realized that, okay, something is broken, something is wrong, right? So I feel like my anxiety came from overcommitting to so many different things. I had a 9-to-5, I was in a relationship, I had like 5 different volunteer gigs, because I feel like that's something that I had to do to progress my career, right? And it started to trickle physically. I feel like my depression came from playing superwoman to everybody else except for myself, having a long list of things to do every single day. And if I don't get to 3 of those 15 things, I feel like I failed that day. So I would say that my journey is really grounded in that. And that's really why I do what I do as a business systems consultant, because I help people use systems, use boundaries, use automations, technology to kind of take things off of their plate so they can put themselves first. So it's really about reclaiming that time, that energy, that power back into yourself, so you can really feed into yourself, so you can be there for others, especially as entrepreneurs, because we have so much on our plate. Not only our personal thing, like we may have mothers, caregivers, right? You may have a 9-to-5 still. You may have a nephew or niece that you have to take care of. Everything is on our plate. And it's really, unless we put ourselves first, we can't take care of any of that. So that's why I'm glad to be a part of this conversation today. I know we're going to get into all of the different things, and I'm just thankful for being here.
Man, I'm so happy you are here, Taylor, because we're going to talk about a lot of things, but we have to be practical about this too. Like, manifestation is huge. Yeah, love it. Meditation, agree. Let's get into it, right? But scale is a whole nother other thing that is so practical, so costly if we just use systems, right? A couple of subscriptions that we can pile 100 folk, 1,000 folk, 5,000 folk on top of, and it won't break like our backs will, right? So Taylor, I'm so happy in the room. Ladies, you are super fire. So let's dive deeper. Taylor, I want to start with you. So wellness has been a hot topic for a few years now, right? I can say even before COVID hit, right? We were thinking a lot more about wellness and eating clean and all of these things. But given COVID did happen, And we were so isolated, right, from our family members. And even when catastrophe did hit, you can't go to funerals like you usually do. If someone's in the hospital, you can't go and see them. If you're working through tough dynamics at work, right? Some of us, a lot of us are sidepreneurs, right? And so you're literally at home trying to navigate these complex situations by yourself. And I take from it that it's really hard. It sounds good, but it's really hard to have wellness. It's hard to have balance. It's hard to keep your mental intact, especially as a Black woman, right? Taylor, can you speak to any thoughts you have there, and maybe why it is so hard for us as Black women to really figure this thing out and integrate it into our lives?
Absolutely. So mentioning COVID did affect us all, but in so many different ways. I know you named a few, like not being able to go to funerals or being isolated, but as entrepreneurs, this could hit us a little bit different. So whether that is, you had a booming business during COVID, or you had to completely stop business to take care of a family member or something else, or you started a business during COVID because you had nothing else to do because you got laid off, So it all hit us different. But I feel like the commonality is that we had to completely pivot the way that we were operating, everyone, right? And in the spirit of pivot, we're talking about change. And in the midst of change, I feel like during that, Black women take on so much because, society kind of depends on Black women to fit a lot of different roles. And a lot of us are both like the breadwinner and the caregiver in our household. So we had to take on a lot more. Let's talk about, parents where your kids couldn't go to school, right? You had to be a breadwinner, had to continue making your money, while also taking care of your kids. So it's just a lot more tasks that we had to take on. But I also feel like as a Black woman, it's in our blood to feel like we have to find a way. We have to figure it out. It's literally in our blood. We watched our mothers do it, our grandmothers do it. Our ancestors had to figure it out, right? But the thing is, the difference is that they were in survival mode. The thing with us is that we kind of have to be able to flip that switch off, because in survival mode, it literally diminishes our well-being because it does not allow for us to put ourselves first. Okay? If we're taking care of everything else and not ourselves, how can we be there for the people that we're taking care of? What happens if we just disappear and go away? I feel like that's something that we don't think about, other than like, oh, if I don't do these 5 things today, then, things are going to crash and burn. Thinking of that short term type of consequence rather than a long lasting term, like, okay, well, if I don't take care of my health, something may physically happen to me where I can't move. I can't, like I said, I was in the bed, stuck, paralyzed because my anxiety, my mental. Luckily, I don't have kids right now and I don't have to take care of them. But if I did, what would happen to them? So those are just some things I feel like that's a hurdle. It's literally in our blood to feel like we have to take on so much. And it's something that we have to, as like a society, as a Black woman, like community, to kind of take our power back in that. Yeah. So those are my initial thoughts about that.
That's good, Taylor. That's so good. Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
I would love to add to that. You mentioned how, our mothers and our grandmothers, they were all in survival mode. And one thing that I've had conversations with friends and stuff with a lot is I never saw my mom or my grandmother like fragile, right? They were always figuring it out, making it happen, So when the question is, why is it so hard? The thing I can think of is just because we were taught for so long that we had to be strong and not fragile, that we had to be fearless, resilient, and all these things. So when the traumas did happen, when the failures did happen, when the mental illness did happen, it's like, okay, what do I do? Like, I haven't seen this before, right? So then it became, just packing it away. My therapist called it putting it in your file cabinet. You just packed it away. You didn't really deal with it. So when COVID hit, baby, it was like you had to sit with it. You had no other choice, right? You're stuck in a house. You're either with your spouse, your partner, whatever, your kids, whatever it is, and you have to figure it out now, right? And now that I have a 2-month-old, and when I started my wellness journey, I didn't know where it was going to take me, but when I found out I was pregnant, I was like, okay, I have to make sure that I am sticking to my mental wellness practices, because I don't want my baby girl going through what I did and not knowing how to even heal, how to even talk about these things, how to even process her emotions, right? And so I think it's so important for Black women to be transparent in these conversations, that it's okay to have anxiety, right? It's okay to go through depression. We're going to get you out of it. You're not going to stay stuck in this, but it's okay. It's okay to sit with those feelings. And I just think it's healing. It's healing and it's freedom that we can talk about it, with our generation, because we didn't get that. I never saw my grandmother saying, oh, I got so much anxiety, or I was depressed when I was 20 something years old, trying to figure out how I'm gonna raise these kids, and my husband is overseas fighting the war. Like, I would be terrified if my husband was gone, left me with 3 kids, and praying to God that he survives all these wars and battles and all these things. But I still got to be a mother and feed these kids and go to work, and I would be terrified and be stressed out. But I never heard her talk about that, So yeah.
That's real. Man, y'all are in a vein, man. For one, yeah, we didn't hear them talk about it. And then 2, like, I don't even know if they had the vocabulary, right? Like they didn't have the vocabularies, and they definitely didn't have the tools, right? What y'all are saying takes me back to my own kind of collision with being what Big Mama was, and realizing that this stuff is so toxic and detrimental, right? So I was married and had done all the things and all the accolades, but I was so tired. I was working 3, 4, 5 times as hard as anybody else on my job, right? But I wasn't gonna get the same titles of the people, and then boom, I'm abused, right? Like, and all of a sudden, these stories I heard Big Mama tell, laughing. Everybody in the house was laughing. We didn't even know to protect Big Mama, right? We didn't even know to feel sad, like telling stories about how Big Daddy used to beat her, and one day she shot him in the butt, and that got him off of her, right? And when I was in the middle, literally it was a collision, right, of these 2 things, of these 2 worlds. And when I was in my own situation and felt how painful it was, literally, right, emotionally, mentally, how painful that was, how scary it was, how devastating it was, my mind immediately went back to her and said, oh man, like, this ain't it. Like, this ain't love. Like, this ain't strength. This is brokenness, right? And I chose something else. And even then, I still didn't have a vocabulary. All I knew was Big Mom really went through, and she died before I could tell her I'm sorry, or or ask how you feel, or say you deserve better. Quite frankly, I love you, Big Daddy, but she deserved better, right? So I think, everything you all are saying, I think you're in a vein. And I think to what y'all are already saying, right? Trauma runs through our veins, and that's why this transparency is so important. I love it. Thank you so much. Tabitha, I'm going to kick it back to you. You've published quite a few bodies of work around the topic of holistic wellness, right? And you've even tied this topic to embracing self-worth. That's deep right there. What is the correlation that mental and emotional wellness have with self-worth?
Oh my goodness, this one's deep. There might be some tears. But mental and emotional wellness and self-worth, but it kind of ties into what we're just talking about, where there is this generational mindset. And when something's generational, it can't just be necessarily changed like in a snap. It takes time for those weeds to be uprooted, for those mindsets to shift. So a lot of this, lack of self-worth goes back to generational issues, and generational issues that we aren't necessarily responsible for. Let me make sure I clarify that. But when your ancestors are seen as property, when your ancestors were taken advantage of by really bad people to procreate more property, when you've generationally been treated so low, I mean, how could you not have such low self-worth? How could you not? My grandmother, she wasn't a slave, but she did pick cotton, and she did some other housemaid stuff. So that's close to home for me. That's my maternal grandmother. And going back to what you were saying, I've never heard her mention how she's had anxiety, how tough it was for her to raise 7 children and lost one of them. Actually, she had 8 and lost one of them. Raised 7 children, kind of like you were saying, Casey. My grandpa, he was a lot. He was lovable, but he was a lot. I'll put it that way. So very, very similar parallels there. And so coming more to the present day, these issues are still there. These issues are still there. It's just a different year or different century, and different tools are being used to keep us feeling at the bottom. And it's sad. That's very sad. And it's hit close to home for me. My cousin, his name was Alton Sterling. And I'm not sure if you heard about him in the news or anything at the time, but we lost him to police brutality. Now, I didn't know him personally, but I'm very familiar with that side of my mother's family. And that's one of those things that challenges your self-worth without you even realizing it. Because you think, oh, that could never happen to me or ever happen to anybody close to me. But it did. And it was just another news story. It was just another statistic of, oh, well, this Black person was a mess, so they don't deserve to be here, type of thing. And that is so wrong. That is so wrong. But even with how upset that makes me, and people that are close to me, it's also something that makes me all the more, how should I say, rambunctious isn't the word I'm looking for, but for lack of a better word, determined, more determined than ever to be like, to break through that glass ceiling that has been put in front of us for so long, not just women, but as a people, to say, no, this is not right. We are people. We're a beautiful people. Sure, we have room for improvement, as everybody does, no matter what color, creed, or religion that they are. There's room for improvement. But if we're given this space to improve maybe a little more often, that would help. If we're given more room to improve, if we're given more resources without a catch to it, if we're given resources that are actually suitable for us, because our needs are different than other people's needs may be, because of these generational things and these personal things that have stemmed from that. So back to the question more specifically, mental and emotional wellness in regards to self-worth. When your mental state is low, whether it's from internal or external sources, your self-worth will decline very quickly, as we've all kind of spoken about in our different situations. And being able to move past that, like with Miss Marie over there, where she was talking about, hey, I got a child. You find that motivation to push past those mental and emotional blocks. Find something that motivates you. Try to block out the noise as much as you can of all the stuff, all the Black women are this and Black women are that, and the generational stuff, and the Black people don't talk about mental health. Just shut it out to the best of your ability and say, you know what I'm going to focus on and be laser focused on is, who can I serve? And it doesn't have to be necessarily within the space of our work, but even, our kids, if we have kids, or our spouses, or even in environments like this, where it's fellow women of color. Focus on who you can support and serve, because that can grow into a movement. And it has, or like several small movements building up into a bigger movement. And that to me is one of the most pivotal ways that we can move past the self-worth hurdle. And to be quite honest, and this might just kind of blow your weave back a little bit, but bear with me. The self-worth hurdle is always going to be there, because we're always going to be people of color. But it's how we are able to move past it, how we're able to not allow it to keep us stuck and stagnant, how it will allow us to not give in to those stereotypes or give people the pleasure of being like, oh, well, there they go again, type of thing. That to me is super, super, super important.
Beautiful. Thank you, Tabitha. And I'm gonna say I'm super radical. Kristen knows already, but if I could add a perspective to that, I want to affirm every single person that deals with this stuff on the Reggie, meaning there she goes again, or, here we go with this attitude. I believe that spaces like this and the fact that Black female entrepreneurs are the fastest growing cohort of entrepreneurs that are in the United States is so important, because when we build from the ground up ourselves and we set the rules and we set the firm culture, right? And we create the solutions, right? And we're speaking on stages like this, providing thought leadership. It is not even a question of there they go, because they got to ask our permission to come on our turf, right? Like that's what this is right here, right? So, and I do think this ties to self-worth as well. I love how you articulated this, Tabitha, because I believe that Black women can live in the land of plenty. I believe that Black women can live in the land of plenty, but we have several options of roads that we can take. We have several options of hands that we can grab to get help, right? There's visibility and we're less fragmented, and we literally create what we don't already see, right? And I think similar to why I came to Africa in the first place. I've been in Africa since February, everybody. But because I need to be around comfort, I need to be around ease, right? And I just made that choice, right? So love what you're saying, and I just want to add that wellness is tactical warfare. Like we fighting, like it's some people on the battle lines, and wellness is tactical warfare. It is the standard, it is the crux of what we're doing, so that we got energy, right, to fight very methodically. Beautiful. I love the diversity of this conversation. And now I want to talk about Kristen. I'm coming over to your lane now. Kristen, you guys, she has shot so many brands, so many Black brands, Black female brands, and she depicts them in a way that is so glorious, so godly, so regal, and they look very, how can I say, like magazine-ish, right? Very top of the line, which we deserve, right? So I'm pitching her this question of around Black women in luxury, because that's a hot trend right now, and it's very controversial in that some people feel like it perpetuates this idea that wealth and luxury should be a standard, and anybody that's not there is missing out, while others feel like, yeah, this is the standard, sis, like reach higher, sis, etc. Kristen, do you have any views on the Black women in luxury movement. Is it inspiring, refreshing, damaging, all of the above? What would you say?
I would say it is definitely inspiring and refreshing. Maybe not damaging, but there's sadness around it. That we are finally normalizing Black women in luxury, right? That we're finally making it a thing for us when it's been a thing for everybody else. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so like when I see these Instagram accounts of, you know, Black women in luxury, and now it's a trend in magazines, we see it and all these things, and I'm like, finally, I can see it. You know what I'm saying? Like I can imagine it for myself because I see another Black woman doing it, living it, right? And I want to say this, that luxury is not just material things. It's peace, it's calmness, it's stress-free, it's putting yourself first, you know, it's building a legacy, it's building a family when you want to build a family, not when society says it's time to have kids, it's time to get married, it's time, you know, all these things. It's what you want your life to be, right? And so when I say I want to live a luxurious life, that's what it is. I want to create my own rules. I want to create my own boundaries, right? Luxury is setting boundaries too and abiding by them, you know, and telling anybody who can't support your boundaries, well, I'm gonna say like my girl, leave gracefully, okay? You know what I'm saying? Like we ain't gotta, you know, back 21-year-old Kristen would have, you know, probably been cussing some people out, trying to, you know. Now, okay, you know, you go your way, I can peacefully go mine. You know what I'm saying? I'm only surrounding myself who has boundaries for themselves too. Because what I've learned along the way is they don't know how to support and respect your boundaries because they have none for themselves, which is sad, which is completely sad, right? I've lost friendships, relationships with family members because they did not have boundaries and I did not know how to respect mine. And I had to put myself first, saying, even though I lose this relationship, I have to grieve this relationship, I have to leave something that's been so close and dear to my heart. I'm learning how to put myself first. And that is luxury. That right there is self-care. That's self-worth, right? Yes. You know, all the things. So when I think of Black women in luxury, I'm not, the Louis Vuitton is cool, you know what I'm saying? All that is great. However, what is it really within yourself? You know what I mean? Like what's luxury within that you can't, it's not tangible all the time, that you can't go out and buy. What makes you wake up and say, I'm living the life. I'm living the life that I wanted, that I created, that I deserve, because Black women deserve. That is luxury.
Whoa, I need to pass around a collection plate because sis just preached a sermon. Like I'm literally tearing up. I love the thought leadership. And that's what this is about. Like we define what our reality looks like, what our standards are. Kristen, I echo everything you said. And it's so deep. Like it hits something I've been ruminating on for a minute. Like I've been in Africa, right? And like these countries, like I can't even describe this. Like legit, like gold, all this stuff is like here in the earth. All the spice, like it's like legit here, but they don't walk around like we do with bags and like look at what I got. Like, and somebody said to me, and I was passing them something talking about. They were like, yeah, because like this element is not worth a man's life. Like they think that. Like Westerners think that. Right? Like you're willing to cut a man down and kill him for this thing that came out of the ground. Like that's not how we see it. Right? And so when you talk about this thing of we defining what luxury is, like the things that really matter to you, right? Like it is kind of shedding some of these things that we've been taught that luxury is, right? And wealth is, and like what is truly rich in spirit, right? What is rich in health, right? What is rich in mindset and rich in purpose? I love it. Thought leadership all the way through. I love it. Thank you so much, Mama. Tamika, I love your spirit, by the way. I'm very happy that you're part of this discussion, and you bring a very key psychological lens to the picture. I don't believe that it's any secret that tools such as therapy have not always been commonplace in the African American community, right? And quite honestly, it seems that we're newly coming into the understanding of many of the things that we've experienced, right? Like I hit on Big Mama and realizing like, oh, like that was horrible, right? And some other people are doing the same thing. We've typically talked about it as generational curses, and now we're moving into talking about it as trauma, right? PTSD, anxiety, etc. What is it going to take for us to move beyond the phase of awakening that we're in right now and really prioritizing the health of the elements of our bodies we can't see?
Absolutely. So, as a psychologist, and it was part of the reason why I decided to go into psychology, right? I experienced a lot of generational trauma. I watched my father beat my mother, and she stayed, like she's still with him. I was a survivor of sexual assault by someone who, a family member brought into our family, and, had to grapple with that. I grew up in the South Bronx, New York, and if anybody can tell you, is the gutter. Like it's the gutter. Like I'm a testament by nobody but God could have brought me through that and to be who I am today. And so while it was traumatic, I recognize that those things shaped me. But it wasn't until I had, a mental breakdown. I had a couple in my life. One was when it came out that I was sexually abused, and it came out by accident, and it was like, oh my God, how do I face this person, right, that brought the abuser into our life, into our family, and tell them that? And it debilitated me. I was in college at the time, and I had to take 6 months off. I had to take medication to get through it. I still graduated on time, praise the Lord, but I had to take the time to unpack that. And then as I got older and I had my first child at 26, which was, about 6 or 7 years after it came out, and I dealt with that depression bout, I realized I have to protect my child. So that's when I started setting boundaries. And that's when I truly started to realize, you know what, I have to put my child first. I have to put myself first. And then I started setting boundaries. But then there were other traumas, right, that you normalize, right? Because you go into survival mode and you think, okay, well, that's just how things were. But then as I got older and I started to see the manifestations in that, right? My low self-esteem, my anger, snapping off at the drop of a hat, anxiety, depression, shopping just to heal, not wanting to feel the pain, right? Not wanting to think about it. And so what came out of that next bout, when I started to realize what was going on, when I stopped doing so many things. I used to do things to keep me busy, several jobs, just so you don't have to focus on the pain. And when I finally sat still, it was like, wow, it was such a weight that was on me. And while it was a long depressive season, I'm not even gonna lie, I was depressed for probably about half of the year in 2019. What came out of it was my book, Weathering Life's Storms, From Trials Through Triumph. And it's a spiritual poetry book. And in that season, I'm like, God, why me? Why now? But he helped me to develop tools, right, to encourage myself out of it, but also to encourage other people who went through similar things. And not just women, but there were men who said, wow, I was molested too, and your poems really, really touched me. And so, I say all this to say that we have to, as painful as it is, we have to face the trauma, right? We have to unpack it. We have to talk to somebody. I have a therapist even now to this day, right? Because it's important to continue to have those conversations, to understand, right? And then also to speak positivity over yourself. Like the Bible says, there's life and death in the power of the tongue. And so sometimes that feeling, that lack of self-worth, you have to talk yourself out of it. So when I feel like, oh, I'm not enough, I remember I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. When I feel like, it's too much to bear, I remember the Lord will never leave me or forsake me. And so it's us remembering that who we are and whose we are. And, you know, you don't have to be a Christian or whatever, but some type of, you know, spirituality or some type of resource, right, that you can use to motivate yourself, right, out of it. Because again, it's to, like my sister Tabitha said, it's not overnight. Like that trauma is generational. So it may take years to unpack it, right? Like I'm in my 30s and I'm still unpacking things that happened, you know, to me when, you know, I was just a child. And so what I would say, what it would take for us to move beyond that phase of awakening and to really prioritize the health of our bodies is to talk about it. Like a lot of the times we feel shame, and that's the trick of the enemy, to make you feel that guilt and that shame that what happened to you was, you know, your fault or you deserved it. And it's like, no, we did not deserve it. You did not deserve it. You are special. You are worthy. You are enough. And so I would say, you know, talking to friends, I say I have a tribe. I have a tribe like that helps me, like when I get to a place where I'm down. Just recently, last month, I went into a serious depression and anxiety. And it was because of a triggered event at work where I was, you know, speaking on a webinar, and a white client kept interrupting me and they kept insulting me and asking, talk about Juneteenth. I'm like, why do I have to talk about Juneteenth? And my white colleague was on the call too, and she didn't get interrupted. She didn't get disrespected. And, you know, dealing with that literally a week after being, you know, being discriminated against or dealing with microaggressions, which are, you know, insults against people on my team. I'm the only Black female on a, you know, all white female team, you know, as an HR consultant. And those back-to-back traumas on top of, you know, growing a life inside of me right now, just, it broke me. And I tried to keep pushing through, but then finally, you know, I had to trust a friend and say, I'm tired. I can't anymore. And it was okay because they had my back. My husband, speaking to him, he had my back. I have, you know, an 8-year-old. He took such good care of her during the time when I was debilitated and couldn't get out of bed, right? He took such good care of me where I felt like I have to be the strong Black woman. I have to hold the family together or whatever. But by opening up and being transparent, I let other people pour into me the same way I poured into them. And, you know, I'm still healing. Every day is healing. You know, I go back to work soon, but I've been focusing on, you know, making sure that I am transparent with people and know that it's okay to ask for help. And so that's what I would say, you know, prioritize yourself. Make sure you're taking the time to do the things that make you happy, right? Regardless of, you know, whether you think someone else, you know, may feel a way about it. I don't care. Like, because if I'm not good, nobody else is good. And so that would be my advice, is just to really, you know, have your tribe, be transparent, and then take the time you need to really do the things that are gonna benefit you and improve your mental wellness.
Ashe. That is thought leadership. That is thought leadership. I don't think I've ever heard that the answer is being transparent, but I can't think of anything more true. Because what if Big Mama really said how she felt, right? What if Kristen's grandmama really said how she felt, right? And gave us a chance to react like your husband reacted for you, right? Like your friends react for you when you say you're broken. And Tamika, I'm probably speaking for everybody on this stage when I say it is an honor to share space with you, because even in this moment, you are transcending your own experiences and your own lessons learned, and you are touching a multitude of people who still haven't opened their mouths, right? Who are still processing decades old things and secrets. And it's just beautiful to know you. It's beautiful to hear your story. So thank you so much for finding us worthy of hearing a glimpse of what you've experienced. I honor you so much. Y'all done got me real full. Thank you so much. So beautiful. And again, y'all, we are talking about we're talking about emotional and mental wellness, health, and entrepreneurship. And I just gotta say that this is what it looks like, man. Like, this is what it feels like. This is what it sounds like. It's nothing different from this right here. So I hope this is showing you that like this is achievable for you, right? Beautiful, beautiful. So let's make it a little more practical before we close out, ladies, if we can, for everyone in the audience. What would you say are some things that entrepreneurs can do, right, on a regular basis to keep themselves whole? Tabitha, let's start with you.
All right. And yes, Tamika, that was you really trying to break out the tissues with us today, for real. But I appreciate your story as well. So practical things. I would say one of the key things for me was developing a routine. I know it might sound kind of woo-woo and kind of like, oh, I could kind of hear people in the audience rolling their eyes a little bit. But I promise you, on everything that I have, and it's not a lot right now, but on everything that I have, crafting out a routine is so helpful. And let me say, because I could hear objections about, well, creating a routine is going to take so long, or it's going to be too hard. Not necessarily. When you create a routine, it should feel as organic as possible. It should be organic and it should evolve, because our priorities are going to change. Our tasks are going to change. We're going to go from being a one-woman team to having team members. We're going to have more speaking engagements. Responsibilities change and shift. But when you have some sort of template to work with, it's a game changer. A checklist. I have a little whiteboard that sits on my desk. Every night, previous night, I write down what I'm going to do for the next day. And I don't make it a long list. I make it a short list. And I even put like a bonus. I write bonus. So if I have extra time left over, I can do this other thing. So a routine, I would say, is the most important. And the second most important, along with a routine, is making sure that the people around you respect your routine, that they respect the structure that you've set for yourself. And if they don't, just be like, okay, well, you got to deal with that by yourself because I don't have time. So make sure the people that are around you or in your space respect your routine. Learn to say no if you need a mental health day. No, I'm not going to meet with you to talk about blah, blah, blah. Or even say, sometimes I have to say, can I please reschedule until another time? Don't be afraid to set those boundaries with yourself first and foremost, and with others. So routine and setting boundaries to me is my top two for sure.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Mama. Tamika, what about you? What are some practical things that ladies can do to keep themselves whole?
So I 100% agree with Tabitha, the routine and setting those boundaries, right? Saying no to other people, but saying yes to yourself. And so I would say one practical way is self-care, like intentional self-care. One of the things I realized during this like bout of depression I went through over the last month is like, I took stock of how I was feeling each day. And so the days when I was intentional about, doing something that made me happy, getting a massage, or if you're balling on a budget, like I do my own little nails, these little press-ons, I don't got to go to the nail salon. I do it and it makes me feel better. I might switch up my hair, like, you know what I mean? Those types of things that make me happy. Taking a warm bath. Like I love to read, and, with the hustle and bustle of, being a mom and a wife and work, sometimes you don't have time for all of that, but again, setting those boundaries. All right, this is my time to just decompress. I'm going to read a book, so I would 100% say be intentional about your self-care and don't like put it off, right? So making a concerted effort every week to do something that makes you happy is going to improve your overall, I like to say mental wealth, right? And then you'll be able to do the things you need to do.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much. Taylor, what about you? What are some practical routines?
For sure. I will say, Tabitha, you kind of took one of mine, but I'm going to just build upon it. So I definitely agree with what the ladies have been saying. I want to build upon that, that list that Tabitha was talking about. So before you go to bed every night, I definitely recommend pulling out only 3 major priorities for the next day, not 5, not 10, not 15, not 20. Okay. Only 3. And Tabitha, I know you said like, and I have like a little bonus. Bonuses are good, but I recommend that you don't even put the bonuses on the list, because you're going to think that you have to get it done in order to have a successful day. So I definitely push you to name those 3 priorities every night before you go to sleep. You know, you can have it next to your bed for when you wake up in the morning. And the reason why I emphasize before you go to sleep is because it's proven that if you do know what's going on the next day, you will sleep more soundly. So we want to make sure we're getting sound sleep and that we know what's going on for the next day and that we're not overcommitting with obligations, right? And since we already kind of talked about that, I do want to I'll throw in a little bonus one for you. I also think it's really important for us to find community, right? So whether that's your friends, you know, your friends get you on in one level, and then you have like your business friends that get you on another level, and then you have like your family that gets you on another level. Think of a community that you can join outside of that. So whether that is, you know, I like watching Insecure, and that's my thing every Sunday, right? I can find a little community that likes Insecure, and it doesn't have to be super high lift. You know, we don't have to go out and throw an Insecure watch party every Sunday, even if it's just something as small as a small, like little Facebook community where you can just drop in like, oh my gosh, sis, I can't believe that just happened. Find some community that kind of aligns with your interests. It'll make a huge difference in how you just go about your day-to-day life.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Taylor. And last but definitely not least, Kristen, what are some routines that these ladies can implement to keep themselves whole?
Well, I would say, Taylor, you took mine, the to-do list, the 3 things. You definitely took mine, but I'm just going to speak on that again because it is important that you give yourself a realistic to-do list and not this everlasting, just, oh my God, like things that you know are coming up next week. Do not put that on your to-do list for tomorrow because you're going to be thinking about it, right? I used to have, I wish I had it around me somewhere, but my mom gave me like this long little to-do list, little notebook, right? And it gives you so many boxes. And I was thinking to myself, whoever created this was setting me up for failure because it's like 11 boxes and you telling me that I have capacity to do 11 things in one day. No, I do not. So I actually stopped using it because I was like, oh, since there's like more things for me to fill, I can add a little more. I stopped using it. I only use it for grocery shopping now. So, so I'll put in my phone 3 major things that I have to do tomorrow, right? And like you said, if it's not that important or if it can be next week, I don't put it on my to-do list for tomorrow because I don't want to think about it yet, right? I only want to allow myself to think about what needs to be done the next day, right? The second thing I want to mention is allowing yourself time to actually be in creativity mode, right? Meaning for me, it's at night. All the things that come to my mind, all the business ideas, all the creativity ideas or personal projects, whatever it is, has come to me at night. And whether it's in my shower or whether I'm just in the bed holding my baby girl, whatever, and I'll put it in my phone so I don't forget, right? So if you know that you're more creative in the morning, like that's when your juices start flowing, give yourself that time. Don't wake up and immediately go to emails and phones and stuff like that. Give yourself the time to think about what's next for me. Think about, or how I'm feeling right now. What do I want to do right now? You know what I mean? You might feel like pivoting in this moment, and that's completely fine. Give yourself that time to be creative, to let those juices start flowing naturally. Like you're not, oh God, I gotta create content. What am I going to create tomorrow? What am I going to put out today? It should be natural. You would allow yourself to let that come to you, so then you can freely give it to those people. So you can freely serve those people and not feel like it's forced, right? So that would be my second tip.
Love it. These were gems. I hope you ladies were taking notes. I see some reactions in the chat. Love it, love it, love it. Thank you all. And you just shared so much today. I really hate to draw this to a close because it's been so rich. But we have to because there's still so many fun things in the lineup. But last question, and this one is for each of you. So I'd like for you to help all ladies listening put something down. A weight that they may be carrying that's not theirs to bear. Please leave these ladies with an important wellness challenge as they close out this year and move into the next. I'll start. I challenge everyone to put down the weight of perfection. We are all human, doing the very best that we can every single day. And that in and of itself is enough. Kristen, I'll kick it back to you. What challenge would you like to leave the audience with?
I would say putting down the pressure of society. Putting down the pressure to have these things by the age of 25, by the age of 30, by the age of 40, right? Be in the now, be present, be connected, right? Find community, find resources, seek therapy when you need it. Don't be afraid. Don't suffer alone, right? Put down the pressure that society puts on us to be this thing, to be this person, to have these goals. Create your own life. Create your luxury. That's it.
Bars. Beautiful. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. Tamika, what challenge would you like to leave these ladies with?
So I like to challenge the ladies to really reflect on this past year, right? The highs, the lows, and then think about if you can imagine, what would make you happy in the new year. Just reflect on that and really aim, right, to focus on those little to-dos underneath that umbrella. It could be anything, right? But just make sure that you're focusing on what is going to truly make you happy, regardless of what other people think, regardless of, some of the self-doubts that creep in. You can fight those disempowering beliefs by speaking positivity over yourself. And I would just challenge the ladies to just, keep pressing.
Ashe. Love that. Thank you, Tamika. Tabitha, what challenge would you like to leave the ladies with?
Well, the challenge I would like to leave our fellow sisters with is to release the weight of other people's prejudices and biases. And I know that might seem like a tall order, but it goes back to what we were saying earlier about the generational struggle of self-worth. You have to let them go. You have to move past those microaggressions, as annoying as they are. You just have to ignore them and move on. As long as you're a moral and decent person and you know that you are not in the mold of any of these preconceived prejudices, biases, discrimination, whatever, then you focus on who you are and being a good and decent person. Just let it go, so that the generation that is after us, I think we're all millennials on this panel, I believe, so that the generations after us, so that our kids won't have to feel like they're alone or feel like they are going to be struggling like we did. They have the tools in place, us, to help them move past that and be focused and rise to the occasion and prove all the haters and Karens wrong. I said what I said.
Yeah, Ashe. Love it. And Taylor, what challenge would you leave these ladies with?
For sure. I challenge everyone to put down the weight of unnecessary obligations. When we ground ourselves in taking care of ourselves first so we can show up as our best selves for others, those boundaries will naturally be created and unnecessary obligations will naturally fall off. So, but it's up to you to manage those boundaries for the sake of yourself.
Man, look, she said what she said. Okay. I love it, love it, love it. Y'all heard her, and she ain't gonna repeat herself. I love this so much. I'm so happy we kicked off the summit with so much authenticity, realness, passion. And I just got to say before we close out on this session, I noticed that my thigh was all out. Sometimes I know it was distracting y'all. My producer Bay is getting all the angles in here. I didn't even know. I'm so sorry, but this is my wellness position. Love y'all. Mean it. Stick around, man. We have so much more for you, and we love y'all for real. Thank you so much for tuning in. Love y'all, ladies. Thank you for being here and rocking with me.